This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermasterclass.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help you, the construction business owner and leader, maximize profits and eliminate chaos. Today we're going to be talking about the world of modular construction, and this is a great interview with Ken Simler from Impressa Modular. And he's been in the modular industry. He's a key player in the modular industry. And here's what we're going to talk about. I asked him questions like, what does he mean when he says all modular homes are prefab homes, but not all prefab homes are modular? What's in it for the homeowner to go with modular? Is there such a thing as modular construction, or is it a modular home? Then we talk about the business opportunity. If you're a builder or remodeler or thinking about getting into modular, then Ken is going to give you some great advice on how to get started. We talk about some myths and misconceptions about modular construction. We talk about the permitting process and how inspections are different, how they're handled in modular construction, and some of the biggest mistakes that people run into and they make in the school of hard knocks as they go up the learning curve with modular construction. And then we talk about if you want to build spec homes or additions with modular, how you can actually get started. And we also discuss a little bit some of the big picture things that are happening at the macro level in the off-site construction industry. Lots of good stuff here. And if you're concerned about lumber prices, we talk about that a little bit. And Ken shares a strategy that his builders are using and that he's using to mitigate the risk and put some language in their contracts to deal with lumber price escalation. A lot of great stuff in here. We go deep on a lot of stuff. Great interview, very helpful. We're going to get into that interview in just a moment. Before we do that, let's talk about some resources that I have for you and some words from my sponsors. All right, let's talk about a form of chaos I know you've experienced before: a bad customer review. Did you know it only takes one negative review to stop a potential job in its tracks? Your reputation takes years to build. Don't let one review change that. From Yelp to Google to Facebook, GoSite helps you manage and generate reviews all in one easy-to-use place. Research shows your customers need to see at least 30 positive reviews in order to trust your brand, and top-ranking businesses on Google have an average of 40 reviews. So, a job well done and a happy customer aren't just revenue, they're marketing opportunities. GoSite makes it easy to build your credibility and authority as a construction leader by automatically asking your already happy customers for a new review with just one click. Take control of your customer reviews and turn your 5-star success into more revenue with GoSite's easy-to-use mobile app. Get started for free at gosite.com/podcast. That's GOSITE.com/podcast. If you are a project manager or a superintendent on a large construction project, you know how time-consuming it can be to collect information from your field teams and subs for the all-important daily report. Many PMs and superintendents spend hours a day chasing their teams for manpower logs, safety observations, and more. And then once you collect the information, you have to sit down at your desk or in your truck, manually enter the data into your project management system. Then if you have questions or if something's missing, you have to send text messages or emails or make calls. And then when you put this all together, it gets pretty chaotic. If that sounds like you, I'm here to tell you there's a better way. Field Chat is purpose-built to help you communicate and collect important information from your field teams and subcontractors. With Field Chat, you don't have to chase people down for visitor sign-ins, COVID assessments, safety orientations, toolbox talks, RFIs, safety observations, JHAs, hot work permits, manpower logs, and a lot more. Field Chat will chase everyone for you by using scheduled text messages or QR codes around the job site to collect the information you need. And because your field crews and subs already know how to use text and QR codes, they won't have anything new to download or learn. And if you have questions or need to send updates, you can use Field Chat to communicate with everyone via SMS text, all from one organized and searchable app. All of the data is auto-synced with your project management tools like Procore and PlanGrid, helping to save you hours a day and improving your documentation, keeping your company protected and your owners happy. Start your free trial today over at fieldchat.com/edge and see how it feels to eliminate paper, data entry, and communication chaos on your projects. That's fieldchat.com/edge. All right. It's time for my interview with Ken Simler from Impressa Modular. You might want to take notes. Enjoy. All right, Ken, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. How are you doing, Todd?
Good. So what part of the country are you located in?
I am actually located west of Washington, D.C. in a bedroom community about 70 miles west.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we met a couple of years ago at IBS. There was a Building Systems Council panel discussion, or I guess maybe the Building Systems Council meeting. So we got connected before that. We talked a little bit. So I appreciate you being on the podcast. Let's jump right into one of the hot topics for today. Here we are in March of 2021. The big topic is skyrocketing lumber prices. So a first question is, what are you seeing from your vantage point with lumber prices, and how are you guys dealing with it? And then we'll talk about how can going modular help mitigate that risk. But first, what are you seeing with lumber prices, and how are you guys dealing with it?
Well, I mean, at this point, we're being impacted much like the rest of the industry because I'm going to say hyper price increases of lumber. We're working with our factories, but the estimates that we're good for 60 days from the factory are pretty much good as for the next few days or next 10 days. In our contracts with our customers, we've actually had to put in escalation clauses. We've had to put in contingency fees. We've been working with some banks who are actually financing contingency fees because they don't want to get a house under construction that can't be completely built. So we do have relationships with a lot of lenders, but modular is definitely being impacted by lumber just like everybody else.
Yeah, one of the big questions from a lot of my clients is, how do I go back to a customer who I have a contract with whose lumber package has gone up by 5 digits? How are you guys, or how are you advising people to do that, if at all?
So for us, it's just like I said, so again, we have a couple banks that we first of all, we tell the customer they can go to their local Lowe's or Home Depot. They can see on a Sunday night there's no lumber left, and what lumber was there was triple the price it was just a few months ago. And so they understand there's an issue, but we also explain that the interest rate has never been better. So if this interest rate moves 0.5% or 1%, it's going to knock you out of the housing market. We really have to figure out how to get you to build now. And the way we protect ourselves from just what you said is, again, we put an escalation addendum into each contract, and that escalation addendum. And we do a lot of homes for cash. So in that situation, we don't have a lender involved. So we just have the escalation clause that says, hey, if it goes up less than 3%, the overall impact of the housing price is less than 3%. It is what it is. You're going to pay it through a change order, and that's what we do. And they sign that going in, and it's a known up front. If it goes up more than that, they have the ability to basically exit the contract. We basically cover our costs, but at that point, as long as we don't have a house ordered, in the modular world, we just get the money for our expenses back, and it can go basically no harm, no foul. Because if we have lenders that we have to do this, that we have to deal with, once a bank gets the package, it could be I'm going to say 6 weeks, 7 weeks with all this refi. A lot of the construction loan lenders are busy. And so what we're trying to do is put a contingency fee in and say that contingency fee is $20,000 or pick a number. We put that contingency fee. Now we still have to fight with appraisals, but that means that contingency fee is financed and covered by the bank. That if we need it, it's there. If we don't need it, it's available, or will just be taken out of the loan that they've turn over into their long-term loan later at the end.
Got it. That makes sense. So you're baking in some contingency with the lender, so they don't get surprised if costs go up. If you need it, it's there. If you don't, then they just write the loan for whatever the final cost is. But you don't have to go back to underwriting. And yeah, that makes sense.
And you can't go back to underwriting. I mean, really, once that loan is done, that's the loan the people have.
Yeah.
And you have to realize, people building houses, they do this 1 to 3 times in their life. We do this every day. And so we work really hard with our customers to set expectations, help them understand the process, because it's not good for anybody if the loan is closed and they have to go up $20,000 or $30,000 of money they don't have. So we try to take care of everything for our customers, explain the process to them. We want them to have a successful home build.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of my clients once told me, he's a kitchen and bath remodeler in the Northwest. He said, "Look, they're not professional customers. They don't do this every day."
Mm-hmm. And that actually brings up another point. I'm sorry, I'll just add it in here. But what we've seen is, and I had this conversation with a lender the other day, and it really struck me, and I hadn't thought about it this way, is there are so many home buyers in the market that never intended to be a home builder. And what he meant by that is they thought they were going to buy an existing home, but because existing home inventories are so low, they couldn't find anything. The only way they were getting a home was to build one. They hadn't spent that 6 months of research on how to build a home and understand the process even a little bit better. And now they jumped in. And so he's got very uneducated home buyers in the middle of a construction loan process. And it hadn't occurred to me, but that's really true with, some of these huge markets with only a couple hundred homes to sell in the market. We're getting people that never intended to be home builders in the home building side of this market.
Yeah, I can see that would make me nervous as a loan officer, looking at numbers brought to me by somebody who's never done it before. That's not a lot of confidence in those numbers. So as opposed to, or compared to the conventional stick-built approach, on-site construction approach, how does going modular help mitigate this or protect against the risk of lumber price escalation, if at all?
Well, historically, with normal fluctuations, a factory would hold prices for 60 days. And because factories were buying lumber so far out, because they're not building one home, they're building hundreds of homes, it was a way they could level out the peaks and valleys. And so they would lock it in. And if you think about, I'm buying a house, you have to pick a number, 65, 75, 85% complete, depending on design. I just took my major vendor, which was the majority of it lumber, and I just locked it in. So that was a great, hedge for me. I didn't have to worry about price fluctuations. I just locked in, again, 65, 75% of my cost. And recently, because of the hyper price increases that are going on, factories aren't locking it in for as long. So they're still locking in. But I've got, when it comes to that construction loan, if it's a cash deal, as soon as I order the home, I have the deposit, I order it, we're good to go. I still have that 6 or 8 week period with the home buyer that's getting a loan because he doesn't have the money to deposit the home with the factory to lock in that price. And so it has impacted us. It's changed things. It's still better. I mean, at least I can have some knowledge, or I can lock in my price for the extended period. But it's definitely impacted when you have 100, 200% price increases, nothing's staying the same today for anybody.
Yeah. Other than locking in prices, it seems like there's going to be a lot less waste with modular. Are there other benefits, maybe not so obvious or not so apparent benefits to modular construction that help with lumber price increases?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one right there. In the factory, they're making the most efficient use because they're not building one home and then just throwing out lots of scrap. They're building many homes. And so we have one factory we work with, there's zero lumber waste. Because if there's any cuts, it gets used as blocking. It gets used in any number of areas in the home. And at the end, you just have tiny sawdust and fragments that's left. And they heat their factory with a boiler in the winter. So literally 100%, if it's not used in the house, it's used in the boiler. There is zero wood waste in it. So, what's how much waste do you have in an average house? Is there 8% waste, 10%, 12%? Construction waste is the leading waste in all landfills in the United States. Anything we can do to eliminate that, I would rather put money in the house than in the landfill. Mm-hmm. So, modular helps definitely in that regard. But, on the job site, once you get to the site, it's also going to be, it's again, much more efficient. You're not having the big dumpster, like you say, outside. That's a huge savings. For the most part, I know many builders that they put 1 to 2 30-yard cubic yard dumpsters out during the process of building a home. And what most people don't realize is you just didn't pay for the dumpster to be there and the hauling of the dumpster. You paid for everything in it. And so that's huge when it's not in a dumpster, it's in the home. It's going where the money's spent where it should.
Yeah, I saw a post recently about, it was a picture of a dumpster full of lumber, and it said that the dumpster is basically full of cash. You're just hauling cash away, and you're financing it. So if you're a homeowner, as a homeowner, you should be a little concerned about seeing multiple dumpsters on your job site, because you're going to pay for whatever got thrown away for the next 20, 30 years, maybe. Mm-hmm. That's probably kind of frustrating if you think about it.
Yeah, and people don't think about it. Yeah, so that's a great analogy.
Yeah. All right. In a recent LinkedIn post, you said, quote, "All modular homes are prefab homes, but not all prefab homes are modular homes." What does that mean?
Well, there's lots of terms in our industry, and so it is really confusing. People hear prefab, they hear modular, they hear panelized, they hear even mobile, manufactured. Again, we've done a horrible job in our industry of creating terms that confuse people. But what happens with prefab, that was a term coined years ago and really wasn't coined by the industry itself. It was outside forces that really created it. And it was really meant to cover panelized construction as well as modular construction. So typically prefabs cover two things, again, panels and modular, but if it's modular, it's definitely prefab, but not the other way around. So, modular is just taking panels one step farther. We're taking them in a factory, assembling them, and bringing them in a volumetric way to the site. And that is the definition.
Got it. So we touched on one of the benefits to a homeowner by foregoing modular, which is they're not financing cash or not financing the filling of landfills with construction waste, because there's much lower lumber waste, probably across the board, mm-hmm. less waste. But what are some of the other upsides to the homeowner for going modular? Well,
from a modular perspective, I would say indoor air quality is a big one. I've been at been to multiple sites, and the ductwork's in, and that low paid labor employees sitting there, and when the floor needs swept and clean, some of it doesn't. It's too hard to bend over. It goes in the duct. Well, now that's 3 years of blowing that up into the customer space. And we've actually had customers say, my child suffers with asthma, and a year after they've lived in this house, they don't need their inhaler any longer. I mean, because it's built in a factory, it's a much better controlled environment. It is sealed from you have a much tighter thermal envelope. It's you can control the air quality itself. But that's the biggest advantage is we've turned construction into a manufacturing process. And now you can get the manufacturing precision in the construction of a home, the build of a home. I mean, obviously, it's much easier to do. You're a much happier worker when you're standing on concrete in an environmentally controlled area. The sun's not beating down on you. The wind's not blowing. It's not cold. It's not hot, versus standing in the mud on a ladder, uneven, trying to, reach just far enough to get the last nail in. And so the precision you can build modular with is just, night and day difference between construction and the field.
Yeah, I gave a talk talking about modular, and I said, all right, I want you to list the characteristics of the worst conditions in which to build something. It's cold, it's windy, you're 20 or 30 feet off the ground, snow, rain, working off generators, in the mud or the snow, uneven ground. That's your typical job site. And it's the worst. They're the worst conditions in which to build something. If somebody said, you know what, we're going to build if Pella was going to come out to your job site and assemble windows and build windows on site, you'd be like, whoa, I don't want that. That's crazy. But that's what they're doing is they have.
You think about it, your house, the most expensive thing you'll ever buy is the only thing you buy today that's not built in the factory. Everything else you build, your phone, your watch, your car, everything is built in the factory except for the most expensive thing you'll ever buy.
Yeah.
And why is that still?
That's a good question. So let's talk about some of the myths and misconceptions about modular construction from the perspective of the construction industry, builders, framing contractors, et cetera, people in the industry. What are some of the biggest myths and misconceptions that need to be busted?
Well, there's a number of them. From a construction perspective, I always love the way everybody says, well, hey, we only do stick-built homes, and stick-built homes are higher quality. But then it goes back to what you were just saying, building in the mud. How can I cut and place every time consistently a stud in a wall if I'm cutting it on uneven ground, if I'm trying to follow plans when the wind's blowing to do the framing? How can I get it tighter? How can I get there's things that I can do in the factory that I can't do in the field. So first of all, I think framing is a big difference. We can do consistent framing in the factory, but the other thing is finishes. I think so many people, and again, it's what we do in the industry, the confusing M word, mobile, modular, manufactured. So many people confuse us with our more affordable cousin, that HUD code, manufactured home. And and manufactured housing serves a purpose, but it's a performance-based code. Basically, the HUD code says thou shalt be able to withstand 90-mile-per-hour winds. And if you can do that with a 2x3 and a 8-penny nail holding it together, that's fine. It's been engineered to do that. That's a much cheaper way to do it. Well, we build to the IRC, which is a descriptive code. And so we have to build to the same code at the factory as it's being built to on site. I think one of the biggest misnomers out there is there's no such thing as a modular home. It's a home built using modular construction. Modular is a construction type, not a type of home. And so if we bust through that, then I think, the interior finishes from the factory are the same name brands that you're getting. It's Certainty, GAF, Kohler faucets, you name the brand. Is it Pella windows? Is it Ply Gem? I mean, you name the brands, that's what's being used at the factory. We're just taking a design, breaking it into modules, and then Lego-like fashion, putting it up or installing it at the location.
So one of I could see, I can almost hear people who are listening to this thinking, yeah, but you have people in a factory who are framing, but they're not experienced frame carpenters. They're not like the guys wearing, there was a carpenter that worked for me years ago, Rick. He had his custom made leather saddlebags. He could do any type of carpentry. He was a craftsman. And some people probably think, yeah, but can people in a factory really produce the same level of quality, whether it's the same quality as a 20-year carpenter or a plumber, et cetera? What would you say to those people?
Well, I mean, no offense to your friend, but I'm sure he was very skilled, very high quality, and knew exactly what he was doing. And that worker basically doesn't exist anymore in the field. It's few and far between to find that worker. What the factory does is, but even your friend was inconsistent on days. He had good days and bad days. There was days he didn't feel like it. That's just reality. And what we've done at the factory is we've tried to create consistency in systems. And it's ergonomically done. So even your friend, if he had to reach a little far, couldn't quite get there, the ladder wasn't where it needed to be. Sometimes he was just doing something good enough just because he couldn't in the field. He didn't have the environment to do it the ultimate proper way. And so in the factory, we have jigs. And those jigs allow, so a wall jig, either the wall is built laying down, or if it's standing up, there's a person working the top and a person working the bottom. So if I'm supposed to drill screws every 8 inches, the screws are inserted every 8 inches. It's not, I'm a short guy and I'm trying to reach 8 foot tall and I can't quite get there. So it's 6 inches short, but that's good enough. That doesn't happen in the factory. It's consistently constructed each time. The thinking is what we've done is, really to your point is we've taken, I don't have plumbers in the factory because I've taken the design, made the plumbing happen in a station. So as I'm doing plumbing assemblies, I've turned plumbing into essentially just gluing pipes and fittings together because it's been designed somewhere else, and an unskilled worker can be trained and supervised to glue pipe together, and then it becomes an assembly process on the line. And if I do that right, just think about, a car assembly. It's a quality product that's fitted and goes down, and that worker doesn't have to know anything in the car assembly about how the engine runs. He just know he does his part the same way consistently every time because that's the way it's been engineered and designed to go together. So
yeah. So that makes perfect sense to me. What you've done is created clearly defined processes, division of labor, put quality control in there, set up the environment so it's right, much like the Industrial Revolution did 200 years ago, whenever that was, when you didn't, instead of needing a 20-year master millwright or whatever the skilled trade was, just need somebody who can do tasks per process. They don't have to be creative, just do the same thing repeatedly. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
And think about what's happening just briefly in the field, Todd, is if you don't have a skilled worker to do the job and you still got to get the house done, your builder has a choice to make. Does the task just not get done, or does he take an unskilled labor and prematurely put him into a skilled position so he gets the task done? It won't be done as well, and there may be callbacks. But in the factory, I can take that same unskilled worker and much like you say, through training and supervision and quality control, make sure that same skilled worker unskilled worker does it right, because he's essentially creating a skilled product from an unskilled worker.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think a lot of people are comparing the current situation to this Fantasyland reality where there are an abundance of 20-year master carpenters like Rick. And like you said, they're just not out there. And you can try to find that unicorn. Maybe you could find a unicorn.
Well, if you have more Ricks, tell him to call me. I need a couple more Ricks right now. I'm friends with a home inspector in the Atlanta area, and he posts stuff on Facebook that shows the quality, and he just shows pictures of production housing, and he shows what happens when you put unskilled labor out there prematurely. As you said, there are things that, gaps between studs and the bottom plate, things that are they're just overlooked in the haste to get these things done and the speed. What I always like is when I do factory tours, and I'll take consumers to factory tours, and I'll take them and walk them around the house before any siding is applied or exterior sheathing is applied, exterior siding is applied. And I'll say, look at each window, and each window has its sill pan, membrane put in perfectly. The window's mounted, it's shimmed, it has its membrane that goes up each side. The house wrap is cut at the right proper angle, it's lifted up. The flashing membrane is applied, the house wrap is pushed back down, and the tape is properly done. And if you look at every window, it's done like that, exactly the same way on every house in the line, and on every window in each modular section. If I go out into the field, even to a production builder, and I walk around, look at least 4 sides of the house, there's at least 3 different ways the windows were finished. It's people are just, they're out on a ladder, they're up there, they can't quite reach it. They don't want to, climb back down, to climb back and just move the ladder, another foot. And so windows. And so, I always have somebody invariably in every tour. If I have 5 or 6 families, and I'll ask, do you have any window leaks? in your house, and one person will say yes, and they've been out there 6 times. He's put 3 tubes of caulk on it, and it won't stop the leak. Well, you're not going to stop the leak. It was installed improperly. It's you got to pull the window out and reinstall it, and that's not what they want to do. And you don't have that problem with modular. Again, it's consistently done each time.
Yep. So let's talk about the business opportunity for builders, remodelers, people who are in the construction industry and they're entrepreneurial. What's the business opportunity here? Like, what do you, if somebody came to you and said, I want to grow my business, how can modular help me do that? What would you tell them?
Well, I think across the board, there's opportunities for both home builders and remodelers. From a home builder, I would look at it as how can you 2x your business? Is that builder, if you're building, average builder for the National Association of Home Builders builds 5 homes per year. If you have the resources to build 5 homes using modular, could you build 10 homes? You're going to make the same amount of money on each home, but now with the same resources. Again, the factory did the heavy lifting. They did 65%, 75% of the construction on the home, that time-consuming part, and you had to manage all of the subs each week, trying to get them into that amount of homes. And now with the same amount of labor, the same amount of effort, can I do 10 homes? Now it's a new process, and that's what I'm sure we'll talk about is doing modular construction is different than site building. It's a different project schedule. It's a different way to do it, and you've got to learn the new scoping for your subs. As a remodeler, there's lots of opportunities if you're doing additions. Think about how long you spend in an addition, and what really makes a big value is if you say you do modular additions is to your homeowner, because I don't care how well you seal the house, how much plastic you put up, how much tape you put down, drywall dust is going to find its way into your customer's house, and they're going to be the customer doesn't like your workers traveling in and out of their house, using their bathroom, making all the dirt, hearing all the noise, and that addition might take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. With a modular addition, you can literally put your hole in the wall where it's going to receive the addition. You can frame that out. You can put the foundation outside. It requires a lot of skill and measurement to get it right. But now you can drop that master bedroom addition, that new kitchen addition. You drop it in, and instead of 6 months, it's 2 weeks. It's a week of prep, install, and finish. And your customer didn't have the workers in and out. They didn't have the drywall dust. All the drywall dust was at the factory. It's done. It's painted. Flooring's in. It's done. Big advantage to remodelers using modular.
Yeah. The more time you spend in somebody's house, the less of a loving feeling they have for you. People get tired of having you around. So what about custom builders? You mentioned that custom builders can basically 2x their business. They can build twice as many homes with the same amount of resources. Can you expand on that a little bit? How does that work?
Well, I mean, first of all, when people look at me, a lot of times they say, "Oh, you're a modular builder," and I always like to clarify. No, I'm not a modular builder. I'm a custom home builder that, oh, by the way, uses modular construction. But because I choose to use modular construction, I exploit modular construction. I use it at every opportunity I can. We do combine it. We have a term we call AMOS, the Advanced Modular Offsite Solution, and that's really where we take panels and components, and so that we really create an insert tab A and slot B process at the job site. So on delivery day from the factory, that house is going up, and maybe one day, depending on the size, 2 days, or sometimes 3, depending on complexity, we are setting the house on the foundation, all the modules, we're installing the roof or lifting the roof. It's typically hinged. If there's panels, it's a large chalet, we're installing those panels. We're putting those dormers in as components. The dormers are already finished, the roof, the windows, the walls, the sheathing, the house wrap's already done at the factory, and we're just dropping it into the holes in the roof. And so we really are doing, when we leave, or at the end of the set, the house is set and shingled. It's ready to be finished. On the interior, the finish is done. So, as you get to existing custom builders, I don't want modular design is really that. Just think, we're taking existing house plans, breaking it up into modules, and just building it in a factory. So I see custom builders say that, oh, well, you just can't design homes like my customers expect. I would beg to differ. I would say give it a try. And where I'm going to say opportunities exist there is you don't know everything there is to know about modular yet. And it does take some time or working with somebody who does, because there's lots of tricks in engineering because we transfer load differently. Most homes transfer load to the outside wall. We have modules, so we transfer load to the outside wall and places where modules meet. And so you have to understand what your structural limitations or structural opportunities are and how you can overcome any design concerns, so you can build a home just like you would, or design a home just like you would as any custom home, and deliver it in modules and set it. So great opportunity.
Yeah. So let's talk about spec homes. I have a selfish interest here because I want to build. I have 6 building lots I want to put spec homes on, and I feel like part of the answer to the housing crisis is simplifying the process of building spec homes, connecting. I think there's a lot of capital out there. There's capital available. There's certainly demand for housing. There's modular factory capacity, and it seems like if we put some of that together, it will help with the housing crisis. So if somebody like me who wants to build spec homes using modular were to get started, what's the process for, how would you recommend I get started with that? Like, where do I go from here?
I mean, from a typical person that's not associated with our company, you're typically trying to find a factory that will do, that you'd be able to work with. So you're going to find that, most people are going to Google modular factories, find one nearby, work to establish a relationship with that factory, take either your design that you have. But this is where you really have to learn modular scheduling. One of the advantages of modular is, and that's why, especially with a lot of developers we work with, I call it modular math. Anytime you can value speed as part of the pro forma for a project, and you can, there's a value for it. I can sell a house 3 months sooner because and turn it because I don't have carrying costs now as a spec builder. That's better. For a spec builder, how fast can I get from cash to cash? And modular really allows you to do that, because I always tell people, if I order a home and they say it's going to be there on Tuesday, March 12th, whatever that is, I pretty much know the distance of the factory. I know it's going to show up on March 12th. Well, if I'm using a precast foundation, can I put a foundation in so it's there a week before? Can I dig the hole so in 10 days I break ground, get a foundation in, house gets delivered, gets set? If I design it properly, does it take me 2 weeks to finish, 3 weeks to finish, 4 weeks to finish on site? So instead of taking 3 to 6 months as a spec builder trying to get a spec home built, and I can tell you from experience, the longer you spend on a project as a spec builder, you're losing money every day you're on the site. The more you can compress that job site construction time, there's more money going in your pocket. So if I can compress literally breaking dirt to certificate of occupancy to 6 weeks with modular versus 6 months, that's modular math. That extra 4.5 months of no carrying cost adds up big in my pocket. Not just in carrying costs, but in mistakes that were going to get made, things that were going to get broken that needed to be replaced or repaired.
You mentioned precast foundation walls. What are some of the systems that you recommend? I know it's probably regional, but are there some broadly or widely available systems you would recommend people look into, especially a guy like me in the Midwest?
Well, in the Midwest, I say on the East Coast, generally east of the Mississippi, there's 2 main companies that I work with, is Ideal Walls and Superior Walls. And primarily Superior Walls covers their franchise system, working with concrete companies, and they work over most of the East Coast, east of the Mississippi. And I'm an evangelist for the precast wall system, because I don't want to put down any site built items or things again, but when we get a foundation that's poured on site, many times the top of that foundation rolls a little bit. It's not exactly square. If I build a house in a factory that is perfectly square, I can't be the framer fudging the house a little bit, the floor plate. and making it look right when it's not. It's very obvious very quick if it's wrong. And we don't have that problem with precast foundations. I mean, we're typically, if we're off, this much. We're not off this much on a foundation. And it's all about speed because, again, so just for an example, we did a home that it was in a county, depending on how inspections were. They just wanted to inspect the virgin soil, and there was no inspection between the foundation placement and the house placement. So on a Tuesday, the Superior Wall shows up at this location, and this home happened to be a 2,200 square foot 2-story with a 56-foot wraparound porch on it. The Superior Wall people showed up at 7. The crew installed the wall. They were wrapping up at about 11 o'clock in the morning. As they were wrapping up, their trucks were passing the house trucks coming in the driveway. So the modules are showing up in the driveway. Our crew is installing the sill plate on the precast wall that Tuesday afternoon. And on Wednesday, that 2-story goes up, 4 boxes, a panelized wraparound porch, a lift-up roof, and it was the roof was shingled and flashed. The top of the house, the porch roof was shingled and flashed. The house roof was shingled, and we had propped the porches, our roofs. And so we went from literally a hole in the ground to a foundation to a house in 36 hours. It comes down to scheduling and knowing and planning. But you can do it, and it comes down to county when inspections are. In some counties, we would have had a day or 3 of inspection, timeframes in there that we would have had to add. Mm-hmm. But still, a house in a week versus a day and a half, that's amazing when you can schedule, especially when you do that in the framework of a spec home.
Yeah, definitely. So to start with the process for spec homes, it sounds like you would recommend Precast Foundation. If we really want to maximize the benefit of offsite construction and streamline the process, Precast Foundation, obviously, Modular. Now, one question on Precast Foundation: do those sit on a gravel? Do they have a concrete footing, or is it just a gravel footing that they sit on?
It's a gravel base.
Okay, got it.
So it's and people have questions about that, and I like I say, I'm an evangelist for it. So with the Precast Foundation, and people say, well, it's going to move, it's going to settle, it's setting on gravel. And I was like, well, when you sold your house to build a new one, did you have to get a house inspection? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, did you have any cracks in the foundation? Oh yeah, somebody had to come and drill it and insert epoxy in it because it cracked. And it's like, that was on virgin soil, concrete footer, concrete wall. And typically where there's hard spots and the rest of the house settles, you get cracks open up. With Superior Wall, I have a dynamic layer of gravel. My house is going to settle evenly, not settle to the hard spots. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's, when people think through the wall system, again, it's a system. It's an engineered wall system. As long as you install it properly, it works. It's an amazing product.
Yeah, definitely. Precast Foundation, modular home, or modular construction. Sorry, we're not talking about modular homes. Modular is a construction method, right? I picked that up. I'm drinking that Kool-Aid now. What else? What are the other strategies or methodologies you would recommend to really maximize or optimize this spec home process?
Well, part of it's going to be making sure you understand scoping for your subs. That's the hard part about becoming a modular builder. You don't understand the true scopes to begin with. And if you don't understand the scopes, how does your plumber, your electrician, your HVAC, installer, how do they understand what the scope is? If you're a subcontractor and somebody gives you a fuzzy scope, what are you going to do? You're going to bid high because you have to cover yourself. And now all of a sudden, when they bid high, that is a spec builder, that's eating into your profit, what you're going to make on that house. So you really need to understand the true scope so you can explain the actual scope to your tradesmen so you get real tight estimates from the beginning. Because you could see $10,000 evaporate out of your profit margin on a house because of poor scoping.
Yeah, just a lack of clarity. So it based on the conversations I've had with people, it sounds like the key is go to the factory, find out what is the factory going to give you? What are you going to get? Whether it's HVAC, the ductwork's going to be in, or you have boots in, and fill in the gaps. You have to have a complete scope and be really clear with your trades. And then on the finishes, it sounds like there's some variability all the way down to the trim, for example. Will the baseboard just be in stock lengths in the house? Will it be cut and placed? Will it be installed? Will the nail holes be filled? Will it be painted? These are just questions you have to figure out and then come up with your scope and then clearly define that. I would recommend a purchase order, clear scope of work description. So it sounds like it's a lot of planning to make sure you don't have any gaps and you don't have any overlap, because you don't want to pay for something twice. Most subs are pretty honest people, but if they included something in their bid and they showed up and it's already done, some of them would probably just say, good for me, right?
Yep, hooray. No, you're hitting the nail on the head there. The factories each factory is slightly different. They may be 85% the same, but that 15% can be huge. And you just have to understand or learn the scoping. And I call it the death by 1,000 cuts. Is you didn't understand this, and this was an extra $300. You didn't understand that, and that was $500. In and of itself, $300 or $500 isn't going to kill the project. But when you have 15 of those, pretty soon, and that's what I see happen so often in the industry, is a builder gets excited about modular, jumps in with both feet, doesn't understand it, doesn't have any help or support, and they lose money on their first house. And then all of a sudden, it's not their fault because they didn't understand it. It's the system's fault because this just took more, it costs more, it can't work, and they go back to site building, and they may grumble, but that's what they know. They just needed to get through. And I tell people it's going to take you 3 tries typically to get to the point where you start finally understanding it, because it's nomenclature, it's processes, it's scheduling, it's getting in sync with your factory to really start doing it. And you can take all the bruises. I mean, the school of hard knocks works, but there's a lot of people out there that have already paid the dues, and experience is the most expensive thing you ever buy.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors, Jim Rohn, says it's good to learn from your own mistakes. It's better to learn from somebody else's mistakes, and then it's best to learn from somebody else's successes. So I want to come back to some of those mistakes, but let's talk about the differences in permitting. You talked about that a little bit, but what are some of the main, maybe the top 1 or 2 things about permitting that are different between conventionally built homes and modular homes?
So across the country, it's very different. So there's a technical answer, and the technical answer is when you're building a modular home and you take it to your permit office for review and permitting, anything that's under the stamp that the factory's doing isn't inspectable by the local office, township, county, whatever. It's inspected at the factory, and it's under the seal and stamp provided that modular homes are built to the state building code. Any deviations, the builder is going to have to make sure he makes the factory aware of if there's local deviations, so the factory will make sure they incorporate it in the construction. But anything under that stamp, the inspector really can't look at. He's not approving. He's really only doing if you're doing decks, patios, garages on site, something like that. Now, he has authority to do that. And in many jurisdictions, it's even authority to look at the final set, because individually they can't look at the modules, but there are attachment schedules to attach those. Is it bolts? Is it lags? Is it straps? For the roof and the boxes. They can look at those and make sure you did that right. They call it a mate wall inspection or a set inspection. And so they can do that. But, technically it should really be easier to do a modular home than it is a site-built home. But so often you see the site-built pile of documents at the permit offices like this, and you see the modular set of documents like this because they don't understand it. And so they ask for even extra documentation. But people are learning. Modular is becoming more popular. Smart building offices, I would say, want modular because they just reduce their workload. But so often when, again, it goes back to subcontractors, when it's the unknown, they tend to go overboard. And it, I have great relationships with many permit offices around the country, and they just love seeing modular come in. Again, they just reduce their workload. I've got some that look at it as, oh my God, they just took our workload. We got to have a job. And they make it try to be as hard as it is, through a full-blown construction. So you have the gamut, but technically It is inspected at the factory, and a local inspector can't make you do a destructive inspection. They can't say tear off the drywall, I want to see that header. That's been done at the factory.
So it sounds like there's some education that should be done up front. Talk to your local building permitting office, local electrical inspector, plumbing inspector, whomever it is, so that they know what's coming. You can kind of get them on board so that they're not surprised when they show up at the job site and they say, "Oh, well, what do you mean? How do I know what's behind the wall?" It's better for them not to be surprised. That's what I found. They don't like to be surprised.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about some of those bumps and bruises and mistakes that modular builders or builders using modular construction often run into. What does that learning curve look like? What are some of the things that could be avoided?
Well, I mean, some of it starts with actually from the very beginning is, one, can I even get modules to the job site? And this is something that so many, and it's misunderstood who's responsible for that. A new builder to modular construction says, well, this is my job site. I gave you the address and the factory's quoting the house. Well, what if you have a hairpin turn or you've got a bridge, you got a single bridge to the site that's a 5-ton bridge. You can't take the house across it. And so the factory doesn't know that. The factory is a home, turn construction into a manufacturing process. They're a manufacturer. Oh, by the way, they transport it, but you as the builder are responsible to understand the route and make sure the modules can get there. And that's one of the more difficult things is when you're site building, it's an 8-foot truck. It's a straight truck. It might even be a semi, but the wheels are at the end. It turns a certain way. We're talking, we have modules that could be 16 feet wide. Modules could be 76 feet long. I've got a 30-foot road truck on a flatbed carrier. I could be 110 feet long. I'm trying to get this to a job site, maybe in a rural area, maybe in an infill location, and that's on the builder. But so many builders also don't understand the tools that are available to get the equipment that is used to get around those tight turns, to get up certain hills. It takes time, and they don't learn. And I'm sure many builders turn down jobs that they could have done because they just didn't understand what modular capability, the tools that were available to them and how to get those tools. But once we decide we can get it there, now you've got a crane that has to get there. Again, a very heavy crane that has to lift. And then we start getting into design. And so as we start working with customers, can I design that? Can I meet the customer's requirement for the design? But once you get past those few things, I mean, most of the learning lessons are things we started to talk about is understanding scoping, understanding scheduling, understanding what an installation crew does, or what we call a set crew. And it's that understanding and adequately pricing and estimating that gap between what everybody else is going to do and what's left for you to do. So, and that's either partnering with somebody to learn, to flatten that learning curve, or take it on your own and learn through the school of hard knocks and ask as many questions as you can.
Yeah. You mentioned a crane. Is the set crew typically included in the cost of the modular units?
About 90% of the factories or more, 95% of the factories do not include set crew as part of being the general contractor. You're typically responsible to have that foundation in place. The factory gives you a dimension plan, but it's not a stamped plan. You're responsible to have a properly engineered foundation in place. Modules arrive, you as the builder or the general contractor are responsible to find a set crew, schedule the set crew. You also find and schedule the crane. So, some people, I don't think they realize how hard we work to make it look that easy on set day, but we've had to take a very expensive crane, make sure he shows up at the right time, an expensive set crew to show up at the right time, that module is being delivered from the factory there and positioned correctly, and then hope the only time we're really susceptible to the weather is on set day. Because now I'm opening up roofs, I'm exposing the house, and it's not like a traditionally built house. If the roof's not done and the floor's in and it rains on the floor, well, we hope it dries. Maybe it didn't, but we're going to close it up and keep working. I have finished kitchens, finished floors, trim, painted drywall, insulation, plumbing, electric. That's all done in the house. I can't have it get wet. And so we really depend on the weather. That's the only time we really depend on the weather. But we have to bring all of that together on set day and make it all work.
Yeah, and that, having dealt with hoisting on commercial projects, having all the right spreaders, hoisting equipment, the right size crane, the right people, everything show up at once. It's like an orchestra, and I could see where that would be. That's definitely not something you just want to wing, because that can go very badly, very badly.
Right. Well, and I tell people, new builders, is set day is the day that you're either going to make or lose thousands of dollars, because there's going to be something happen that you didn't expect, and you have to make the right decision because you've coordinated all these very expensive things to be there on that day. And that's the most important day to get right in the process of modular construction.
Good stuff. All right, let's zoom out a bit and talk about what's going on at the macro level. And the reason I asked that question is, over the past few years, I've seen lots of news releases about huge investments into offsite construction, modular construction. Google, hundreds of millions of dollars are going into the construction industry, and specifically offsite construction. So what's going on at the macro level, at the high level, that most of us may not be privy to?
Well, I mean, it was interesting. I'll start out, like you said, we met at the International Builder Show years ago, and of course this one was canceled this last year. But in 2020, I do a number of presentations, and when I did have hair, I always felt like the redheaded stepchild at the International Builder Show, being in offsite construction, because everybody that was on traditional, I'd say, kind of looked down on us, but we were a builder, so we were kind of there. And in 2020, I saw a huge change. I would do presentations and I would fill a room, but in 2020, it was standing room only. Everybody decided that, I think in 2020, with the growth and need of more housing, the super frustration, like we talked earlier about lumber materials and prices going up, cost at that point, the only thing it was lumber prices were secondary to was labor. And we have that perfect storm right now of low labor shortages that just won't go away. Can't find RICs. We got lumber prices that have nobody ever saw. We thought September was the highest peak we've ever seen in our life. Right now, we would love to go back to last September's prices at this point. It's the perfect storm for offsite construction because it eliminates that need for that site labor. Like I said, we can 2x a builder. How can you use the same resources and do more? It's the only system that allows you to do it. So I think modular's been discovered, and as modular's been and offsite construction has been discovered, money finds its way to it. So now what we're seeing is lots of people come into the industry that they have money, but I'll be honest, the scary thing for me is they know zero about modular. They know what they've heard, and we've got to make sure that, as we work with factories, that have, solid standing, that they didn't get in, because modular is a process. Modular is great, but you've got to know what you're doing. There is a learning curve for it, even with a factory. And just like finding the RICs of the world in the site, there's not that many. There's a limited amount of experienced plant managers, general managers, production managers, the engineering managers that really understand the process, and we're not training a lot of new ones right now either. So, yeah.
So are you seeing modular factories pop up that maybe are well funded but not necessarily capable yet?
Well, like I said, there's a learning curve, and they have to find. It's almost, you got to get to the critical point. You got to, if you can get so far and get past getting production. So right now we are in a good time of, many people build factories in the past and say, if I build it, they will come. But they have to develop a sales force. They have to get the pipeline going. They have to have operating capital during that transition to get the line full. They've got that learning curve on the line, and getting quality product out the door. and they've got to survive for 1 or 2 years, maybe 3, to where everything is hitting on all cylinders and getting that factory into production status. And I think one of the fallacies that I've been seeing with so many people as they call me and talk to me is, I think people, from the West Coast and have that software investment mindset that they're going to make 30% year-over-year returns on their money. Any construction is a capital intensive, heavy equipment. Even in a factory, it is a fairly low margin product. And I think a lot of factory builders come into it with high projections, false expectations, and then reality sets in. So I don't want to sound negative, but I see that happening.
Yeah. I don't want to get into Katerra, but there's some interesting stuff going on there. Lots of stories, news stories about Katerra, huge, incredibly well-funded, but maybe that's some of that West Coast software type.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, we call it contact, construction technology companies. And, I never want to see anybody fail, because I don't want to see Katerra fail. I mean, I feel like that sometimes gives the industry a black eye when, especially with you have somebody with the notoriety and publicity that Katerra had. But it's, again, going in and trying to spin your way out of issues. And this construction industry in the United States is so huge. I mean, the thing that you could come in and change an industry, I don't care with, the money even that they had. I don't think people fully grasp how large it is and how regional it is. We have the unique opportunity. I'm licensed in 42 states. Just simple things, designs of homes. Basement doors are at the top of the steps on the East Coast. They're at the bottom of the steps in the Midwest. Drywall finishes. It's smooth drywall in the East. It's textured drywall on the ceilings in the Midwest. You go a little farther over to the flyover states. Now it's textured walls and textured ceilings. There's just subtle design things and certain finishes that nobody thinks about that are very different as you go across every state and every region.
Yeah. So I know we've got a hard stop here in a few minutes. Take a few minutes and just tell us about your business, what you do, and then where people can connect with you if they want to do so.
Okay. No, thanks, Todd. Our business, my company is called Impressa Modular, and we are primarily website based for all of our marketing and sales. And so we work with a network of almost 25 factories across the country. And so what we end up doing on our consumer facing side is we work with customers across the country through the design, order, delivery, and set in the 42 states that we work in. And we acquire our product through that factory base. And we've done that. We got nationwide. We had started as a company. We actually started out. We were born out of the recession, and we grew that all the way to be nationwide by 2015. But we were looking at how to really get more depth in our business model. And our business model, we have the experience. Everything we've been talking about, through this podcast was how, the learning curve and how do you get there faster. And then, in addition, and I know you work with lots of, builders and remodelers, our industry is usually terrible. They're terrible marketers and salespeople. They're builders. And so we have a machine that, we're the number 1, 2, or 3 website across the country for modular homes, modular construction. And so it's how do we actually take advantage of that? And so we decided franchising was the way to go. That if we could take franchising and take our brand, which is known nationwide, and our notoriety as a company nationwide, we have the business systems, the technology, the relationships with the factories. We have all of that, basically a builder in a box, and we turned that into a franchise. So in 2019, it took us through 2019, we got our franchises set up in 42 states. And the funny thing is that at the International Builder Show, that year that I was talking about in 2020, we had a booth there, and that's when everybody got interested. And it's funny that nobody else was really promoting modular construction. And at our booth, we thought we were there to promote franchising, and about half of our traffic was developers. Developers had discovered modular and had nowhere to go. They didn't know who to talk to. they're not really a franchise, but so we actually from that now have created a website that's coming up here in the next week called Impressa Modular Pro. So what we're trying to do as a company is we sell to our consumers. We're making ourselves available for builders who want to find their way to modular, that we can really bring you in under a brand, help you with the sales, give you the number one website in your area, give you those immediate factory relationships, because they're harder and harder to come by. The demand for modular, like you said, has gotten huge, and now there's competition for space at the factories to sell homes. They're backlogged right now. And so we give you immediate access to the factories. And if you're a developer, we give you capacity and access in that you wouldn't have normally had. We can help you with design. I mean, when it comes to developers, I would, the three top things are in the design, or in this is design. And it's, and we help developers with that. But, and finding me out there, obviously most people find me on LinkedIn. I'm Ken Simler on LinkedIn. And I actually do have a website, kensimler.com. And so you can find out more about me. I'm actually very active in the industry. I'm the current vice president of the Modular Home Builders Association. I'm the past chair of the Building Systems Council within the NAHB. And I'm actually on the board of directors for the Custom Home Builders Committee within the NAHB. So I really take an active role, not just in our company, but I'm a promoter of our industry across the nation.
So kensimler.com, and I'll have these links in the show notes. They can look you up on LinkedIn. I'll have that link, and impressamodular.com. Those would be the best places for folks to go.
Right. And email is simply ken@impressamodular.com.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. All right. Well, you've got an audience of a few thousand business owners and leaders here who are forward enough thinking to be listening to a podcast, and at least they're interested enough to be listening to this point in this conversation. Anything else that you'd like to share with them?
I do promote, like I say, modular. I know you have a great group of listeners and people that you participate with. I'm whether we do business together or not, I'm happy to talk with people and help them as best I can understand or ask questions as much as time allows. So I appreciate the opportunity for you to let me talk to your audience, Todd.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being generous with your time and coming on here. It's been great. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Todd.
If you're a project manager or a superintendent on a large construction project and you're tired of chasing people down for daily reports, safety orientations, JHAs, or toolbox talks, here's some good news. Field Chat will chase everyone down for you by using scheduled SMS text messages or QR codes around the job site to collect the information you need. Start your free trial today at fieldchat.com/edge and see how it feels to eliminate paper, data entry, and communication chaos on your projects. That's fieldchat.com/edge. All right, be sure to check out the show notes for all the links. You can go to impressamodular.com, go to kensimler.com. That's KENSEMLER.com. Connect with Ken on LinkedIn. He shares a lot of great resources there. And don't forget about all the resources that I have available for you over at buildermasterclass.com. You can learn about the masterclass on maximizing profitability. There's a mastermind group, a peer group for you if you're a construction business owner using CoConstruct. Lots of free resources there. Some videos on helping you eliminate chaos with communication, streamlining your change order process. A lot of good stuff there. And as always, thank you so much for the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a moment, 60 seconds, leave a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast player you're using, or leave a comment on YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe, like it, all that good stuff. That would be amazing. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. A happy customer isn't just revenue, it's a marketing opportunity. From Google to Yelp to Facebook, join the more than 30,000 small businesses already using GoSite to request, respond, and manage reviews, all from one easy-to-use dashboard. GoSite puts the power back in the hands of you, the construction business owner, with a mobile app that transforms how you run your business by making it easier for customers to find, book, pay, and review your services online. Get